it's got 50,000 people, and this city got destroyed completely by a typhoon in 1992, and was rebuilt and was one of the nicer places to visit the Philippines because everything was new there and it was a place that worked. That's all been wiped out. And even in the big city of Cebu, which is, I think it's the third largest city in the Philippines after Manila and Davao, they got heavily impacted by it, and there's still electricity out all over the island of Cebu. I don't know about the city itself. I know the airport there, it's an international airport. It's functional. That's where relief effort has been staging from. I know FedEx has been bringing in planes into Cebu and transferring that onto the military planes that can go over to Tacloban, because that's the only airport of any size on that island. But it was throughout the whole central Visayas region. I was talking or chatting with someone on Twitter yesterday who lives on the island of Panay, and that's to the northwest of Cebu. And they haven't had electricity since everything came through, but he was saying everybody's okay there. So it's just, this is going to take a long time to get fixed. I don't know what more else to say except they really need help, and the best way to do this is to send donations to a good, reputable charity and know what charities you give to. Salvation Army is a good one, so is World Vision. And the Philippine Red Cross is also underground. If you give it to the American Red Cross, the money is probably never going to get there. 70% of that money is going to go to administrative fees, and the rest of it will just end up in the general fund. So that's my perspective on charities right now.
Yeah, I would second the endorsement for World Vision. They've been top on my list of regular giving. In fact, we just started sponsoring a child in Romania. World Vision has a rather nice setup for child sponsorship because you can actually go on their website and pick a specific child. They don't allocate one to you. And we were able to find a young woman who is, I can't remember whether she is 2 days older or 2 days younger than my daughter, so that they're almost exactly the same age, and actually have a lot of the same interests and everything. So has your daughter and this girl ever spoken to each other? No, the way we have the ability to arrange letters and stuff. Everything goes through World Vision for security purposes. And I don't know if they do any kind of internet chat or Skype or anything of that nature. I do know that the requirements of the program say that you will not have any contact outside of World Vision. They will, if you wanted to travel to the foreign country, they can arrange meetings face-to-face and things like that. But for security purposes, and I think they just have a uniform set of rules wherever they are in the world, because, of course, World Vision is also in some not very nice places. And I think that
Romania is one of the better places that they happen to be, and it's actually they're rebuilding after the communists fell, but they've been having a tough time at it.
Yeah, it sounded like, and I don't have our sponsored child's pack in front of me, so I can't remember the specifics. But as I remember, she lives northeast of Bucharest, and it was basically an area that under the had been an agricultural area, and then under the communists after the Second World War, it was forced industrialized. So basically they built all these factories and then took the local population and basically enslaved them to work in the factories. And then after the fall of communism and everything, the industries disintegrated and left everybody just incredibly impoverished, even more so than they were under communism. So it's been sort of a very long road back there.
Right. But
Well, Keith, another thing that was in the news, and I bring this up because I know it's one of your areas of expertise, but there was over the weekend another airline crash of a 737 in Russia. This one, I think, is probably going to wind up being probably a combination of bad maintenance and probably shoddy airmanship.
probably pilot error. And not knowing the details, and we never will know the details because the Russians aren't going to ever release anything. They don't have anything like the National Transportation Safety Board that goes in and does proper investigations like they do in the United States.
True, but interestingly enough, I just read this this afternoon, but apparently the NTSB, and this is being reported by, let me get up the actual link. This is being reported by RT.com. That I don't know whether the Russian officials requested it, but the NTSB has sent 3 people to assist with the investigation.
Well, they want to be over there because it's a Boeing airplane, and anytime there's an accident that involves an airliner that was built in the U.S., instantly, the lawyers are going to come out and sue the manufacturer of the plane, and it doesn't matter what sort of maintenance the plane was done on the plane or how old the plane is. The manufacturer is always held a certain amount of liability. So the NTSB probably needs to be involved if the Russians will let them do it. In some places, they just won't let them in.
Yeah, just looking at the history of the plane, it was a fairly young aircraft by commercial airliner standards. It was only 23 years old, or 23 plus, I guess, which provided a plane is adequately maintained. That's no big concern. But it has seemed to have bounced around. It was initially delivered in 1990 to Uralair, and then belonged to Air France Uganda Airlines, Rio Sul Blue Air, Bulgaria Air, and then to its current or to its last airline of Tatarstan Airlines. Apparently, it did have a emergency landing last year, almost a year ago, November 26, 2012, due to a failed cabin pressurization shortly after takeoff. I do not know, or did not look through and click through on links to find out why, what the root cause of that was determined to be. And actually, looking at the Aviation Herald, they don't have anything that says that cause was determined. Just that the accident happened.
That wasn't even considered an emergency landing by any standards. They were not at the point where they were above the area where they had to be pressurized. I mean, there were no masts that came down or anything.
Well, no,
I think they had a stuck outflow valve or something like that. That airplane has had a rough road. It's you looked at you mentioned the carriers that had those. I bet it really got really well treated by Uganda Airlines.
Yeah, I would not expect that Uganda Airlines has the greatest maintenance record in the world.
And a good number of those didn't. This is not. The age of the airplane doesn't really matter so much as how well it's kept and how many cycles it has on it. That'll tell you an awful lot about the airline, about the airplane itself. But the Russian airlines, those regional airlines, they're some of those are pretty dodgy outfits, and I have no idea about the one that crashed that crashed this time. But I was just through that airport a few months ago, and man, some of those airplanes were in rough shape. You looked at them, and they were wing and a prayer airplanes, and they were still. A lot of these airlines are still flying the old Tupolev 135s and 145, and Ilyushin 76 is really old Russian pieces of junk. And you don't know what sort of maintenance gets done there. I don't really know what sort of standards the Russians have on as far as aviation oversight goes. I mean, the United States is first. The United States, the Europeans, the Australians, the Japanese are the best in the world as far as aviation safety goes. Some of the others, well, not so much. But
I remember with the crash of the Asiana plane there in San Francisco. I remember reading your tweets about how poor the Korean pilot community seems to be.
They are. They're the scariest bunch of people I ever had to deal with the Koreans. It's best way to describe their pilots, the ones I've ever known, are Asian cowboys. They got this can-do attitude. No matter what, they're going to land the airplane, and they're going to not no matter what, getting the plane on the ground when it needs to be there. Going around means losing face, and you can't do that. That's something that's not permitted in their society. And they could probably those pilots might have even been fired for doing that. But that's not just within there. You know, I got a story I can tell you about recreating an accident. I'm a flight simulation engineer, as I think you know. I don't know if I doubt your listeners know that, but I got tasked with recreating an accident that happened in Tokyo's Narita Airport a few years ago, and I can't give you extreme details about it, but I can tell you what I had to do. This was a plane that was landing, it was on approach into Narita in bad weather. It was not good weather. It was not just bad weather. There was wind shear advisories, and it was a rough day to be flying into there. And that's often very typical in the wintertime in Tokyo. But anyway, this plane, they were trying to figure. The NTSB was trying to figure out. So was the JTSB. That's the Japanese people, and they wanted. They asked if we could make a simulation from the flight data recorder plus videos that were there. That's a very difficult task. But the flight data recorder is a good place to get information about accident data, but it's not a good place to get simulation data. They only sample the data at most once per second. A real-time simulation is done 60 times a second. So trying to interpolate between those points is difficult, and then trying to figure it out. Also, watching the video of the crash, we were able to do that to a point that satisfied the NTSB and the JTSB and as well as the airline. And it was scary as hell to try to fly this replay of this simulation in the simulator. And you wonder why the pilots didn't go around. And it was strictly pilot error. Undoubtedly, they screwed up in about 20 different ways. and this was an American outfit. This was not some sort of a fly-by-night Asian outfit. But fortunately, the pilots both died in the accident, and fortunately it was a cargo airplane, so there were no passengers on there. Otherwise, they would have all been killed. It was an awful accident. And
well, Yeah, the I think we could probably do a entire program talking about aviation safety issues. I've got a couple other folks I've thought of to